Aloha! Welcome to art class with Miss Ariel. We have such a fun project today. We are going to create geometric bats. Here is an example. I'm going to talk about what you're going to learn today, what we're going to go over, the supplies, and I'm going to walk you through step by step how to create our geometric bats today. So take a look. We are learning about geometric shapes for this lesson and facial expressions. So we know that geometric shapes are the shapes that you see in like math, for example. So your traditional triangles and squares and circles. Okay, and then we're going to be using geometric shapes such as rectangles and squares and triangles and circles to do our geometric bat project. We're also going to be talking about the color groups, primary and secondary colors. So let's get started, and I'm going to start with what's called I can statements. Alright, so our I can statements. This is all about what you as a student are going to learn and practice during this art project. Today, I will learn about color so that I can choose primary or secondary color schemes for my bats. Today I will learn about geometric shapes so that I can cut and arrange squares, triangles, and rectangles to make my bats. Today I will learn about facial expressions so that I can change the position of my eyebrows and shape of my mouth to show emotion on the faces of my bats. So those are our three main concepts that we are going to learn and do within our geometric bat project. Next, I'm going to talk about the geometric bat grading rubric. So these are all of the things that you want to make sure you complete within your project and check that you have done it before you turn something in. Okay, now let's talk about the grading rubric. I'm going to break it down for you so you know what is expected for you on this bat project, so that you know what you need to do before you turn it in. We're going to go through the 4 different things that you are being graded on for this project. The first thing, remember, you can find this grading rubric at the bottom of your art lesson on the Canvas page. So if you open up the bat assignment and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you should see the grading rubric. And you always want to make sure you check this with an adult if you need to before you turn it in, so you can determine if you need to add anything or fix any errors. Now let's review this. Geometric shapes for the bats. Did the student use only squares, triangles, and rectangles to create the body of the bat? So if I look at my bat, you will notice we used a square and triangles to create the body of the bat. And I'm going to show you later in the video how we use a rectangle to make the squares and triangles. Next, primary or secondary color schemes used for the bat. So remember, you should have watched the videos in the quiz before you start this project. Then you would have learned or reviewed what secondary and primary colors are. So this is another aspect you're being graded on. Did the student choose a color scheme for their bats? The student should have either created a set of bats using only primary colors or secondary colors. So you should not use both primary and secondary, but you use one or the other. Before we move on, let's review your primary and secondary colors. So if we look here, we have our 3 primary colors. The primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. They are primary because they can't be made by mixing any other colors together. So you start with the primary colors. Then what will happen is you'll use the primary colors to get our secondary colors. So here we go. Our secondary colors. The secondary colors, purple, green, and orange. They can be made by combining the primary colors. Combining means mixing, okay? Putting both things together. So if we look at our primary colors, and if I were to mix red and yellow together, I'm going to get orange, the secondary color. If I mix yellow and blue together, I would get green. Lastly, if I mix red and blue together, I would get purple. So for your bats, you have to pick, are you going to make the bats out of the primary colors, or are you going to make the bats out of the secondary colors? That's one thing I'm looking for. So my bats, I used secondary colors only, orange, green, and purple. Okay, the next thing you must have in your project is each bat has a different facial expression. So that means their faces look different. Did the student create different facial expressions on each bat to show emotions of their bat? So in the project, when we get to the part where we're making the faces, you will see a handout like this. You'll see it in the video, but it's also on the assignment, and you can print this out if you need to print it out to look at. So you'll be able to see the different facial expressions. You'll pick 3 of them, or you can always make your own up. Because each of your bats must have a different face. You must make different faces on each of the bats. And when we get to that part in the lesson, I'll review that again with you. Okay, the last thing, and this is going to be important because you always want to make sure your project is completed properly, meaning you followed all of the steps and you didn't forget to include anything. The student completed all the steps of the project to the best of their abilities and did not leave any sections incomplete. The bats have the different facial expressions. The moon and the moon details are drawn. The correct color groups were used for the bat. And you did not turn any incomplete work. Once you have checked the grading rubric and looked at your assignment, and you figured out that, woohoo, I'm done, I did everything I was supposed to, then you would go ahead and take a picture or a video and turn it in. All right, I'm sure you are antsy to start the project. So let's talk about the supplies that you're going to need. Before I bring the supplies out, I want to make sure that you understand it is perfectly okay to use supplies that you have. You can change things out. For example, if you don't have black paper, but you have a dark blue paper or a dark purple paper, that's fine. That would be a great substitute. For the moon, the project says white paper. I did not have any white paper, so I substituted that with like a gray. And you could even substitute it with maybe a light yellow. But if you don't have something specifically, then just try and think about what you could use instead. Okay, let's get started with the supplies that you will need for this project. You will need a dark piece of paper. You will need a black marker, okay, either permanent or regular, that's fine. You will need something white to draw with, crayon, colored pencil, metallic silver marker, oil pastel, something white. A regular pencil, glue, either a glue stick or liquid glue, whatever you're comfortable using, some scissors, and a tracer, a circular tracer for the moon. If you are okay drawing your own big circle out, then that's fine, but some people need a little more help and they'd like to use something to trace a shape, and that works too. Then you'll need either that gray or white paper for the moon. And you'll need your 3 colors for the group you choose. Remember, your secondary colors or your primary colors. For this project, for the example I'm going to be walking you through, I've chosen to do my primary colors. So I have my red, my yellow, and my blue paper. Okay, once you've gathered all of your supplies, go ahead and come back and we will start the next step, the very first step of the project. Welcome back. Now, the first step, go ahead and get the paper you're going to use to make the moon. So that gray or the white or the light yellow, whatever you have. And then you can get the circle tracer. So I'm just using a Tupperware lid, that's circle, and a pencil or the white colored pencil. If you're going on a dark paper, the white you can see a little bit more. Put the tracer on the paper. Now, before we trace it, I want to just show you where and how to trace something so that you don't waste all of the paper. If I put this here in the middle and I traced it and then I cut it out, I would have all of this extra space that's kind of wasted. But if I wanted to save paper, which is always a good thing, I can take what I'm tracing or what I'm drawing and move it close to the edges. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my pencil and I will trace around my circle lid. If you are not using a tracer, same thing. You don't want to waste a whole big piece of paper. Try to draw it in just one section so that you can recycle and reuse. So here I'm going to trace around my lid. And you can use other circle things like a cup or a bowl or anything that you can find is okay. And then I'm going to fill in the rest of my circle because it kind of had that, little lip right there. Another trick, if you're having a hard time seeing the pencil because the paper is dark, you can do it with a white colored pencil or a white crayon, and then you'll be able to see it a lot better. Now, once I have my circle, I'm going to go ahead and grab my scissors, and I'm going to take my time and I'm going to cut my circle out. Remember when you're cutting that it's okay to move your arms and the paper as you cut to help you cut it easier. So right now, cut your moon out, then go ahead and come back and we'll do the next step. I'm sure the circle for the moon has turned out great. Now we're going to need that black marker and whatever the white drawing device you're using, so the color pencil, the crayon, the oil pastel, whatever you're using that is white. And we're going to create some circles of different sizes and the letter C of different sizes within our circle to create the craters of the moon. And then I'm going to show you a little tip you can do with the white colored pencil to show some shadow, to make it look a little more 3D. Right now, grab that black marker and we're going to start making circles, different sizes throughout your big circle, because these are going to be our craters in our moon. And then we're also going to add some C shapes to add some more 3D dimension, so to make our moon look not as flat. Once you are happy with your craters, you're going to grab the white drawing utensil you're using. So I'm using a color pencil, and you're going to add some white only to little parts of the circles and the C to create some shadows, or to make some things a little look 3D. So see how I didn't put the white all the way around? I just did a little bit. And you can go ahead and do that. It doesn't need to be perfect on either all of your circles and your C shapes, or just some of them. And then once you're done adding your dimension or your shadows, go ahead and come back and we'll do the next step. Great. I'm sure your moon and the craters look wonderful. Now the last part of this section of the project is getting your dark piece of paper for the sky. So I have my black paper. Go ahead and grab that. Again, you need your white colored pencil or crayon, whatever white thing you're using to draw with, and your glue. You're going to take your moon, and you can go ahead and place it anywhere you'd like on your dark piece of paper, your black piece of paper. Turn your circle over. Go ahead and get that glue. Make sure you have glue along the edges, and then of course some going towards the middle. Turn it over, and you want to pick somewhere on your paper to glue the moon to. Always pressing down. As a reminder, you can always pause the video, do your work or the steps, and then come back. Don't think you have to rush and do everything super fast. Pause the video, do the parts of the project, and then start the video again. Alrighty, we have our moon. Now we're going to use that white drawing utensil, and we're going to create stars. And you can create big ones or little ones or even shooting stars. And you're going to fill up the paper, kind of spread it out. So for my stars, an easy way to make our star is start with the X, put a vertical line straight through, so up and down, and then one more across, which is horizontal, side to side. You can use this same concept and make smaller ones. You can even make medium, and you could have them shooting by making some of these motion lines. And you want to kind of spread them out and get them on all sides of the paper. And sometimes you can add like little dots to show maybe some stars in the far distance. So go ahead and fill up your background with some stars. And then once you have filled up the background with stars, here is your choices. You can stop and come back to the project a different day or time. Or you can come back right after you've done the background and start the next set of steps for the project. So if you look on your Canvas page, you'll see that I broke things down into groups so that you don't have to work on a project all at one time. You can work on it in sections, in portions. So this would be our first set of steps. You can stop at the background and come back later, or you continue working on the project and I will continue guiding you through the next set of steps. Perfect. Your night sky probably looks amazing. Now we're going to do the next set of steps. And this is where we're going to use the geometric shape rectangle to make our squares to create our bodies for our bats. So go ahead and move your sky, your nighttime sky, out of the way and grab your colored paper that you chose. So remember, either your primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, or your secondary colors, orange, green, and purple. And there's two ways that you can do this cutting of the shapes. Some of you might be more comfortable with cutting the shapes directly out, and some of you might feel better drawing the shapes out and then cutting the different shapes. So I'll show both ways. Now, one of the ways you can do this is you're going to need, for the bat, a square, 2 large triangles, and 2 small triangles. So you can take the paper and you can draw a square. You can draw 2 large triangles, and those will be for the wings. And then you can draw 2 smaller triangles for the ears. And then you can cut those out, and you would do this, you would draw the same set, the square, the 2 large triangles, and the 2 small triangles on the rest of the paper colors that you still need. Another way to do this is to simply start by drawing out a rectangle that's, I would say, about the size of your hand. And I can do that by putting my hand on the paper, and the top of my finger would be the top, and then kind of where my hand meets my wrist would be the bottom. So I can make a line, and then I'm going to make my rectangle. Remember, rectangles are short on 2 sides and long on the other sides. Okay, so then I have my rectangle. Once you've decided to either do the rectangle method or cutting out the shapes, you need to cut them out. So I'm going to demonstrate with the rectangle. If you're able to, keep all your papers together, your 3 colors, so that you only have to cut the rectangle once. That means you got to hold with your other hand a little bit tight. I'm going to cut along the lines that I drew. Now remember, you can hold the paper and turn it as you cut to make things a little bit easier. There we go. Now this is extra, so I can move that out of the way, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now I have my 3 rectangles with my primary colors. From here, you are going to cut or draw a line on the rectangle to make a square out of the rectangle. I'm going to show my yellow because it's a little bit easier. I have my rectangle, but if I start on one side and I move my pencil over a little bit, you'll see I have a square shape that I can get from the rectangle. So then I'm going to draw a line, and now I can see that I have a rectangle and a square. I'm going to draw this line on the other 2 colored rectangles that I have. Next, I'm going to take my scissors. I'm going to cut along that line. So now I have a rectangle and a square. And you will go ahead and do that with all 3 of your colored rectangles. Okay? When you've done this, go ahead and come back and we will do the next step. Okie dokie. Now you should have your rectangle and your square for each. If you chose to draw out the square and then cut out the square, then that's fine. Go ahead and make sure you have your 3 squares. Move the extra shapes to the side. You don't need anything but your 3 different squares. Grab your nighttime sky. So you'll have your moon and your squares. Now the squares are going to be the bodies of the bat. You are going to decide where to glue your squares on the paper. It's okay if you have some of it covering the stars or some of it covering the moon, that's fine. Grab your glue, make sure you got glue on the edge so it sticks, and then start picking a spot where you want your bats. Go ahead and do that with your 3 squares, and then you have that choice. Once you have glued your squares, you can take this time to either take a break and stop the project and come back at a different time or day and finish or do the next step, or you can continue along with me working on the rest of the steps of the project. Again, glue your squares onto the onto the background for your bat bodies. Once you're done with that, come on back and we'll do the next step. Perfect. So now you will have completed the second portion of the project. We are here. We've added the squares to our paper. Next, you're going to move this out of the way and you're going to grab those rectangles again. Remember, if you cut out the shapes individually and you're not doing the rectangle method, just go ahead and watch this and wait. So now we have our rectangles and we need to cut them down a little bit more because we're going to use some of this to create the wings and some of it to create the ears. Now what I like to do is called a finger space, a 1 finger space. So I would take my finger and I'm going to line it up on the edge of the paper, and I'll take my pencil and I'll draw on the other side all the way down. So I have my 1 finger space, and I'll do that on all 3 of my rectangles, my 1 finger space. Now I have 2 different shapes. I have my bigger rectangle and my skinny rectangle. What do you think we're gonna do now? That's right. We're gonna cut along the lines. Go ahead, grab your scissors and cut out those 2 pieces. So you have a smaller piece, which is thin, and then a bigger piece. Okay. For the time, take your small pieces and move them to the sides. We don't confuse ourselves. Next, we're going to draw a diagonal line. Remember, that's a slanted line. And we'll create the diagonal line going from the top left to the bottom right to help with our wings, because we're going to turn this rectangle into 2 triangles. I'm going to start with my pencil at the top left, and I'm going to draw a diagonal line all the way to the bottom right corner. Woohoo! Now you see 2 triangles. Do the same thing for your other 2 papers. Once you've done that, go ahead and cut along the diagonal line you made for all 3 rectangles. I'm going to cut. Now I have 2 triangles. Again, cutting across diagonally, 2 triangles. Cutting across diagonally, and I have my 2 triangles. Now my triangles are going to be used for my bat wings. Go ahead and move your wings, your triangles, to the side. Grab your artwork with your squares. Once you have done that, we will start the next step of adding the wings. Alrighty, go ahead and pick up 1 set of wings. You're going to glue the 2 triangle wings to the square body of the bat. And you want to make sure that you're using the same colored triangles as the square body of your bat. You're going to go ahead and glue your wings onto your bat. And it's okay if some of the wings go over other places or even stick off the paper, and you'll go ahead and put them on your squares. And you're going to do that for all of your bats. And you can make them go different ways, right? You could have the wings going in different types of directions, maybe down, and it shows, or maybe the bat is going up. And then once you're done gluing the wings of the bats, come on back and we'll do the next step of adding the ears. Once we add the ears, then we'll be done with the 3rd section of the project, where you'll be able to take a break or continue finishing the project. Yay! Whew, you have completed a pretty big part of the project. It's really starting to come together and look like bats. You have glued your wings to the square body. Now it's time to take this, move it aside, and you're going to grab those 3 thin rectangles, and you're going to cut them in half. So you can either draw a line down the middle and cut it in half, or you can always just hold it and cut it in half if you don't need to draw the line. So go ahead, cut those 3 pieces in half. 3 pieces in half. Move 3 of the 3 halves away, because you're only going to need 1 set. Now remember when we did that awesome trick and we put the diagonal line through the paper of the rectangle and then it made 2 triangles? You're going to do the same thing for this. You're going to make your line diagonal going from the top left to the bottom right. And you're going to do it for all 3 of those pieces, because we need the triangles for the ears of the bat. And of course, you probably know what to do next. Go ahead and cut, and you'll have 2 triangles. Cut along that diagonal line, 2 triangles, and again, cut along that diagonal line, 2 triangles. And let's keep them together, and we're just going to move them off to the side a little bit. Grab our bats, and you're going to glue the ears onto your bat. So you're going to take this time, figure out where you want the ears to be on your bat, glue them, and then decide if you're going to stop and take a break for the project, or if you are going to continue and finish the project from here with my help guiding you through the next steps of the bat. Again, glue the ears and come on back once you're done with that. Alrighty, so we have finished the 3rd section, or the 3rd part of the project. We are now going to move on to creating our facial expressions on the bat. So let's review this facial expression handout again. Remember, you can see it here on the video, or you can see it on the Canvas assignment bat page if you need to print it out and have it with you. Otherwise, I have it here. You're going to pick 3 different faces to draw on your bats. Remember, each bat needs to have a different face. So from here, go ahead and grab that black marker and come on back and we'll make the faces. Okay, now you have your black marker and we are going to design the faces. Remember, you do not have to copy me. You can make your own faces up, or you can use the handout example to make the different faces. But you do need to have a different face for each bat. I like to have this next to me so that I can see it while I'm working. Okay, I'm gonna get my marker and I'm gonna start making my face. I got my circles and my pupils. And I really want to make sure that I add my eyebrows because those are going to help us with showing facial expressions. And the part of the wing that you glued onto the square just now becomes part of the bat body. You don't need to worry about that. We'll talk about the wings in a little bit. So go ahead, add your different facial expressions to your bat, come on back, and we'll do the very last step of the details in the wings. Now you should have your facial expressions. Remember, your facial expressions is what your face shows when you feel a certain way. Next, we're going to add the last thing, which is the details on the bat wings. I want you to look at this bat down here. Now, the triangle, part of the triangle got glued onto the square. But when we add the details for the wings, you're going to not draw lines onto the square where you have part of the triangle. You will stop. You will stop so that only the lines stay on the wings and don't go onto the square. So let me show you. You're going to take your wing, start at the top point, draw a line down, go back to the point, leave some space, draw another line, and then you can draw another line down, and you want to stop when you get to the edge of the square. You don't want to draw a line onto the body of the bat. And you're going to do that for all of the wings. And you can add more than the 3 lines you saw that I added onto the triangle part of the wing to create your wing details. Go ahead and finish up the wings. Come back. We're going to go over the rubric, the grading rubric, and you'll check your work as I talk about it to make sure you have all the steps you need before you take a picture or a video and turn the assignment in. Fabulous! I am so proud of all of you doing this geometric bat shape project. There were a lot of steps and a lot of skills that you learned or got better with. You are complete. You are done. So let's check the grading rubric. Remember, that's what you need to look at before you turn your project in, so that you can double check you did all of the steps. Now you can either go do this on your own, you can do it with a parent or guardian at home, or you can listen for the next few minutes while I go over the rubric and double check my work with you. Here's my rubric. Remember, a rubric is the things you are being graded on. First, let's check our work. Did the student use only squares, triangles, and rectangles to create the bodies of the bat? So, check your work. Did you use squares? Did you use triangles? Did you use the rectangle to create the shapes? Probably. If you are having something that looks pretty similar, you most likely use the shapes correctly. All right, let's check the next part. Did the student choose a color scheme for their bats? Color scheme is like a group, okay? The student should have either created a set of bats using only the primary color groups or the secondary color groups, but not both. So let's look. Did I use only the primary colors for my bats? What are the primary colors? Oh, yep, red, blue, and yellow. Maybe you used the secondary color group of purple, orange, and green. Okay, I think I did that part correctly. All right, I can move on. Next, we're going to check, did the student create different faces on each bat to show the different emotions? Okay, let's think and look at our picture. Did I make 3 different faces on my 3 bats? If yes, perfect. You can move on and check the last part of the grading rubric. If you didn't, think about a way you could problem solve. Maybe you could add eyebrows to a face to make it look different than another face. But you should have 3 different faces. Once you do, let's move on and check the last part. Project completed properly. The student completed all the steps of the project to the best of their abilities and did not leave any section incomplete. The bats have different facial expressions. The moon has the details, like the craters we drew. You added the details in the background, which would be those stars, and you used the correct color group to create your bats. Lastly, you did not turn in any incomplete project. Since we went through and double checked our work, if you think that you are all good to go, you have done all of the steps asked, please take a picture or a video and submit it in Canvas for a grade. If you made some mistakes or accidents, that's fine. You can fix it. You can correct the error. Lastly, I want to remind you, please come to the Zoom meetings if you need help, if you need me to guide you more through a project, if you need me to show you how to do something, if you don't understand what I'm saying in the video after you've watched it. That is what my Zoom times are for. Watch the instructions, go over the instructions. If you still have questions, please contact me.